The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony.
Welcome back to the Berean Pursuit. This is week 30, day 3. Today we're reading from 2 Chronicles chapters 22 and 23, 2 Kings 11, Psalm 131, and Matthew chapter 8. Last time in the Old Testament reading, we read about Jehu becoming king of Israel, how he killed the king of Israel, Ahab's son, as well as Ahaziah, the king of Judah, who was a grandson of Ahab as well. And he also killed all the prophets of Baal. Well, not only the prophets, but all the worshipers of Baal. He killed Jezebel, and he carried out the judgment that God wanted carried out against Ahab's house. And he started off very zealous for the Lord, but did not continue in getting rid of the golden calves that Jeroboam had set up. He kept those. God had promised him he would have sons on the throne till the 4th generation, so that's going to happen. But he's not being very successful as a king. He's losing land to the king of Aram, which probably would not have happened if he was faithful to the Lord. And it ended with Jehu's death at the end of the reading last time. All right, let's get into the reading today in 2 Chronicles chapters 22 and 23. Then the people of Jerusalem made Ahaziah, the youngest son of Jehoram, king in his place, since the raiders who had come into the camp with the Arabs had killed all the older sons. So Ahaziah, son of Jehoram, became king of Judah. Ahaziah was 22 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 1 year. His mother's name was Athaliah, the granddaughter of Omri. Ahaziah also walked in the ways of the house of Ahab, for his mother was his counselor in wickedness, and he did evil in the sight of the Lord, as the house of Ahab had done, for to his destruction they were his counselors after the death of his father. Ahaziah also followed their counsel, and went with Joram son of Ahab, king of Israel, to fight against Hazael, king of Aram, at Ramoth-Gilead. But the Arameans wounded Joram, so he returned to Jezreel to recover from the wounds they had inflicted on him at Ramah when he fought against Hazael, king of Aram. Then Ahaziah, son of Jehoram, king of Judah, went down to Jezreel to visit Joram, son of Ahab, because Joram had been wounded. Ahaziah's downfall came from God when he went to visit Joram. When Ahaziah arrived, he went out with Joram to meet Jehu, son of Nimshi, whom the Lord had anointed to destroy the house of Ahab. So while Jehu was executing judgment on the house of Ahab, he found the rulers of Judah and the sons of Ahaziah's brothers who were serving Ahaziah, and he killed them. Then Jehu looked for Ahaziah, and Jehu's soldiers captured him while he was hiding in Samaria. So Ahaziah was brought to Jehu and put to death. They buried him, for they said, "He is the grandson of Jehoshaphat, who sought the Lord with all his heart." So no one was left from the house of Ahaziah with the strength to rule the kingdom. When Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she proceeded to annihilate all the royal heirs of the house of Judah. But Jehoshabeath, daughter of King Jehoram, took Joash, son of Ahaziah, and stole him away from among the sons of the king who were being murdered. And she put him and his nurse in a bedroom. Because Jehoshabeath, the daughter of King Jehoram, and the wife of Jehoiada the priest, was Ahaziah's sister, she hid Joash from Athaliah so that she could not kill him. And Joash remained hidden with them in the house of God for 6 years while Athaliah ruled the land. Then in the 7th year, Jehoiada strengthened himself and made a covenant with the commanders of hundreds, with Azariah son of Jehoram, Ishmael son of Jehohanan, Azariah son of Obed, Maaseiah son of Adiah, and Elishaphat son of Zichri. So they went throughout Judah and gathered the Levites from all the cities of Judah and the heads of the families of Israel. And when they came to Jerusalem, the whole assembly made a covenant with the king in the house of God. "Behold the king's son," said Jehoiada, He must reign just as the Lord promised concerning the descendants of David. This is what you are to do. A third of you priests and Levites who come on duty on the Sabbath shall keep watch at the doors. A third shall be at the royal palace, and a third at the foundation gate, while all the others are in the courtyards of the house of the Lord. No one is to enter the house of the Lord except the priests and those Levites who serve. They may enter because they are consecrated, but all the people are to obey the requirement of the Lord. The Levites must surround the king with weapons in hand, and anyone who enters the temple must be put to death. You must stay close to the king wherever he goes. So the Levites and all Judah did everything that Jehoiada the priest had ordered. Each of them took his men, those coming on duty on the Sabbath and those going off duty, for Jehoiada the priest had not released any of the divisions. Then Jehoiada the priest gave to the commanders of hundreds the spears and the large and small shields of King David that were in the house of God. He stationed all the troops with their weapons in hand, surrounding the king by the altar and the temple from the south side to the north side of the temple. Then Jehoiada and his sons brought out the king's son, put the crown on him, presented him with a testimony, and proclaimed him king. They anointed him and shouted, "Long live the king!" When Athaliah heard the noise of the people running and cheering the king, she went out to them in the house of the Lord, and she looked out and saw the king standing by his pillar at the entrance. The officers and trumpeters were beside the king, and all the people of the land were rejoicing and blowing trumpets, while the singers with musical instruments were leading the praises. Then Athaliah tore her clothes and screamed, "Treason! Treason!" And Jehoiada the priest sent out the commanders of hundreds in charge of the army, saying, "Bring her out between the ranks and put to the sword anyone who follows her." For the priest had said, "She must not be put to death in the house of the Lord." So they seized Athaliah as she reached the entrance of the horse gate to the palace grounds, and there they put her to death. Then Jehoiada made a covenant between himself and the king and the people that they would be the Lord's people. So all the people went to the temple of Baal and tore it down. They smashed the altars and idols to pieces, and killed Mattan the priest of Baal in front of the altars. Moreover, Jehoiada put the oversight of the house of the Lord into the hands of the Levitical priests, whom David had appointed over the house of the Lord, to offer burnt offerings to the Lord as is written in the law of Moses, with rejoicing and song, as ordained by David. He stationed gatekeepers at the gates of the house of the Lord, so that nothing unclean could enter for any reason. He also took with him the commanders of hundreds, the nobles, the rulers of the people, and all the people of the land, and they brought the king down from the house of the Lord and entered the royal palace through the upper gate. They seated King Joash on the royal throne, and all the people of the land rejoiced. And the city was quiet, because Athaliah had been put to the sword. And now let's read 2 Kings chapter 11. When Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she proceeded to annihilate all the royal heirs. But Jehosheba, daughter of King Joram, the sister of Ahaziah, took Joash, son of Ahaziah, and stole him away from among the sons of the king who were being murdered. She put him and his nurse in a bedroom to hide him from Athaliah, and he was not killed. And Joash remained hidden with his nurse in the house of the Lord for 6 years, while Athaliah ruled the land. Then in the 7th year, Jehoiada sent for the commanders of hundreds, the Kerites, and the guards, and had them brought into the house of the Lord. There he made a covenant with them and put them under oath. He showed them the king's son and commanded them, "This is what you are to do. A third of you who come on duty on the Sabbath shall guard the royal palace, a third shall be at the gate of Sur, and a third at the gate behind the guards. You are to take turns guarding the temple. The 2 divisions that would go off duty on the Sabbath are to guard the house of the Lord for the king. You must surround the king with weapons in hand, and anyone who approaches the ranks must be put to death. You must stay close to the king wherever he goes." So the commanders of hundreds did everything that Jehoiada the priest had ordered. Each of them took his men, those coming on duty on the Sabbath and those going off duty, and came to Jehoiada the priest. Then the priest gave to the commanders of hundreds the spears and shields of King David from the house of the Lord, and the guards stood with weapons in hand, surrounding the king by the altar and the temple, from the south side to the north side of the temple. Then Jehoiada brought out the king's son, put the crown on him, presented him with a testimony, and proclaimed him king. They anointed him, and the people clapped their hands and declared, "Long live the king!" When Athaliah heard the noise from the guards and the people, she went out to the people in the house of the Lord, and she looked out and saw the king standing by the pillar according to the custom. The officers and trumpeters were beside the king, and all the people of the land were rejoicing and blowing trumpets. Then Athaliah tore her clothes and screamed, "Treason! Treason!" And Jehoiada the priest ordered the commanders of hundreds in charge of the army, "Bring her out between the ranks and put to the sword anyone who follows her." For the priest had said, "She must not be put to death in the house of the Lord." So they seized Athaliah as she reached the horses' entrance to the palace grounds, and there she was put to death. Then Jehoiada made a covenant between the Lord and the king and the people that they would be the Lord's people. He also made a covenant between the king and the people. So all the people of the land went to the temple of Baal and tore it down. They smashed the altars and idols to pieces, and they killed Mattan, the priest of Baal, in front of the altars. And Jehoiada the priest posted guards for the house of the Lord. He took with him the commanders of hundreds, the Kerites, the guards, and all the people of the land, and they brought the king down from the house of the Lord and entered the royal palace by the way of the gate of the guards. Then Joash took his seat on the royal throne, and all the people of the land rejoiced. And the city was quiet because Athaliah had been put to the sword at the royal palace. Joash was 7 years old when he became king. And now let's read Psalm 131. A song of ascents of David. My heart is not proud, O Lord, my eyes are not haughty. I do not aspire to great things or matters too lofty for me. Surely I have stilled and quieted my soul like a weaned child with his mother. Like a weaned child is my soul within me. O Israel, put your hope in the Lord, both now and forevermore. And now to the New Testament in Matthew chapter 8. All right, last time we finished the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 7. So chapters 5 through 7 are the Sermon on the Mount. So today we're moving beyond that. We finished talking about this great sermon and Jesus ending it with the admonition that we need to listen to what he says and do it, not just hear his words and not do it. That's a fool who builds his house on the sand. So we've got to put it into practice, bear fruit in our lives, not just call Jesus Lord, but act like he's Lord. Do what he says. All right, well, let's go ahead and get into the reading in Matthew chapter 8. When Jesus came down from the mountain, large crowds followed him. Suddenly a leper came and knelt before him, saying, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. "I am willing," he said, "be clean." And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. Then Jesus instructed him, "See that you don't tell anyone, but go show yourself to the priest and offer the gift prescribed by Moses as a testimony to them." When Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came and pleaded with him, "Lord, my servant lies at home, paralyzed and in terrible agony." "I will go and heal him," Jesus replied. The centurion answered, "Lord, I am not worthy to have you come under my roof, but just say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority with soldiers under me. I tell one to go, and he goes, and another to come, and he comes. I tell my servant to do something, and he does it." When Jesus heard this, he marveled and said to those following him, "Truly I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith. I say to you that many will come from the east and the west to share the banquet with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the sons of the kingdom will be thrown into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Then Jesus said to the centurion, "Go. As you have believed, so it will be done for you." and his servant was healed at that very hour. When Jesus arrived at Peter's house, he saw Peter's mother-in-law sick in bed with a fever. So he touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she got up and began to serve them. When evening came, many who were demon-possessed were brought to Jesus, and he drove out the spirits with a word and healed all the sick. This was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet Isaiah. He took our infirmities and carried our diseases. When Jesus saw a large crowd around him, he gave orders to cross to the other side of the sea. And one of the scribes came to him and said, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." Jesus replied, "Foxes have dens and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head." Another of his disciples requested, "Lord, first let me go and bury my father." But Jesus told him, "Follow me and let the dead bury their own dead." When he got into the boat, his disciples followed him. Suddenly, a violent storm came up on the sea so that the boat was engulfed by the waves. But Jesus was sleeping. The disciples went and woke him, saying, "Lord, save us, we are perishing." "You of little faith," Jesus replied, "why are you so afraid?" Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the sea, and it was perfectly calm. The men were amazed and asked, "What kind of man is this? Even the winds and the sea obey him." When Jesus arrived on the other side in the region of the Gadarenes, he was met by 2 demon-possessed men coming from the tombs. They were so violent that no one could pass that way. "What do you want with us, Son of God?" they shouted. "Have you come here to torture us before the appointed time?" In the distance, a large herd of pigs was feeding. So the demons begged Jesus, "If you drive us out, send us into the herd of pigs." "Go," he told them. So they came out and went into the pigs, and the whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the sea and died in the waters. Those tending the pigs ran off into the town and reported all this, including the account of the demon-possessed men. Then the whole town went out to meet Jesus, and when they saw him, they begged him to leave their region. All right, in the reading today in the Old Testament, we were talking about how Athaliah took over and killed her grandsons when her son was dead. And that way she could take over as the ruler, as the queen of Judah. It's pretty horrible to think that she would kill her own grandsons to have that kind of power, but that's what she did. And she got all of them except for the youngest, who was Joash. So the wife of Jehoiada the priest was actually a daughter of Athaliah's husband. So she was a sister to the king who had died, and so she was saving her nephew. And I don't know if she was Athaliah's daughter. It doesn't tell us that. He might have had another wife that she was from, but anyway, she stood up to Athaliah in the sense of hiding this youngest boy, Joash, and they kept him alive until he was 7 years old, then made him king and put Athaliah to death and wiped out Baal worship from Judah. And so it starts off great. And that's where we left it in today's reading. Unfortunately, it's not going to stay that way with Joash, but we'll get into that next time as we continue tomorrow, Lord willing. In Psalm 131, it's a very simple psalm about being humble and not getting into things too great for us, but just having confidence in the Lord. The things that are over our head, the Lord deals with that. And so we don't have to worry about it. We can have humility to just let God deal with it. In the New Testament reading in Matthew chapter 8, we see quite a few miracles that Jesus did. So we see the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapters 5 through 7. Now we see a lot of evidence for why we need to listen to Jesus. So we see him healing a leper. We see him healing a centurion servant just by saying the word. And that was due to the great faith the centurion had. This Gentile understood authority and the nature of Jesus' authority more than what many of the Jews understood. We saw him healing lots of people, casting out demons, and then going to the other side of the sea and healing these two demon-possessed men, casting out the demons that were in them into the pigs. And the pigs ran down the hill and drowned, but that got rid of the demons from these men. And the people of that area were afraid of Jesus, and I think rightfully so in some ways. Someone who has that kind of power is someone to fear. But of course, with Jesus, that fear should only really be there when we're disobedient to him. As long as we're on his side, it should be a great comfort that he has that power. Earlier, we also saw him calming the sea, proving he has power over nature even at that level, not just at the smaller level, but the large-scale weather. He has power over that, just to say the word. He has authority. And we also saw where the men were saying, "I'll follow you." And Jesus is saying that won't be easy. I don't have a place to lay my head, even though you have foxes that have that and birds, but not me. Because he was wandering around, going everywhere. So following him was not going to be that easy, but that doesn't mean he didn't want them to follow him. He even told one man to follow him. He said, "Well, let me first bury my father." And I don't know if that meant that his father had died, or he's waiting for his father to die, or what, but it doesn't really matter. Either way, Jesus said, "Let the dead bury their own dead." That doesn't mean it's wrong to go to a funeral or to have a funeral, but the point is that there are more important things than funerals. And following Jesus in that time when he was there, and you could actually literally follow him and learn from him, that was a higher priority than having a funeral. And that should be a higher priority for us today as well. Doing whatever it takes to follow the Lord and do his things should be a higher priority than even burying our dead. All right, well, that's the reading for today. Join me again tomorrow as, Lord willing, we continue on with the Berean pursuit.